You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
I'm your host, Justin Lonero, along with my co-hosts, Kyle Dvorchak, Mr. Bob Harris. Gentlemen, it is week 8 already. Wow, unbelievable. Mr. Harris, what is good in Albuquerque, New Mexico tonight?
A little chilly here, a little nip in the air, but nothing that you folks back east haven't dealt with for the last 3 months. So, yeah, all good here, and looking forward to an exciting week of the football. Got off to a delightful start with that Monday night. How appropriate is it as we head into Halloween that Sam Darnold sees ghosts, and I feel like this was a butt fumble moment. You know, I mean, like a thing that's going to hang around his neck forever. That he was mic'd up.
Yep.
In case you missed it somehow, he was mic'd up for the game, and at one point said, "I'm seeing ghosts." You know, I see ghosts at the Patriots' ferocious pass rush, And you know how forgiving the New York media is. I'm sure they're going to give him a free pass on this. Not much. And so you've seen how like one moment can transform, people's view of a player. I'm hoping this doesn't happen with Sam Darnold and he bounces back. We saw it, previously against Dallas. It was a great return from the mono. And then this time he went up into a New England meat grinder and got ground up. Multiple turnovers, couldn't get the ball off. But I thought, and maybe you guys saw it differently, but it wasn't just that he was throwing interceptions. I mean, that was horrible enough. It was the way he was throwing it. It was like he was just launching the ball in the air.
Yeah, playing that game we played when we were kids. What was it called, Kyle? 500? You throw the ball up, or 200?
We just played catches up. We couldn't count very high because we're stupid. So we just played catches up. You caught the ball once and you got to throw it.
It was bad off his back foot. It was bad. I mean, he had pressure from everywhere.
Yeah, granted, the Patriots defense, super tough defense, no question about that. And we talked a little bit about the scoring prowess of this defense, and we'll see what happens as the season unfolds. But right now, they're currently they've already outscored every defense in fantasy scoring on ESPN formats. Every other defense than the Bears, they're about 40 points behind them, and we're halfway through the season. So there we have that. We got some games coming up. We start out with a Thursday night game we just want to touch on briefly because some of you may listen afterwards. But Adam Thielen, Mike Zimmer says he's improving. I'm saying that's great. I still don't think he's playing. BC Johnson would move up in the rotation. Either you guys have any feeling that Adam Thielen's going to be able to get on the field?
No. I guess I'm in charge of the news for Football Diehards, and I don't want to, get too high on myself, but I'd be shocked if he plays this week. Much like last week, Alvin Kamara was always had a chance to play technically up until he was ruled out on Friday, but they did things to indicate that wouldn't be the case. BC Johnson, if you need a spot starter at receiver, there's a handful. I think it's just 2 bye weeks this week, so maybe the need isn't quite as high. But if you had Adam Thielen and you need him, I actually think BC Johnson's probably a pretty solid play. He led the team in targets last week at 9. Was kind of a standout. Didn't blow anyone's socks off in preseason, but I don't know, made me some money in DFS. I think he was clearly the guy, and he showed something in preseason. Everything points to him in a good matchup being a viable starter, at least on regular fantasy rosters. If you're playing Thursday to Monday slate, maybe he's in play for you as well. But definitely at least I guess if you're playing a streaming receiver, I'd look to him probably more so than anybody else this week.
Justin,
we love
on the other side of the ball, Justin, is one Adrian Peterson who underwent an MRI on his ankle, claims to have a grade 1 high ankle sprain, or grade 2 high ankle sprain, grade 1 low ankle sprain on the same leg. I saw the play. He looked like he was in quite a bit of pain. Fumbled the ball on the play. Says he's good to go. Are you buying it?
I'm buying it. I mean, you have the revenge narrative there. It's probably a game that he wants to play in. They're huge underdogs. This is a sad Washington Redskins team. The rookie had surgery. Obviously, Geis is on IR. It's not good. Now you have Wendell Smallwood up, which we love that name.
Chris Thompson. Chris Thompson down with the toe.
Right, and Chris Thompson, if he was healthy, he's just not big enough to withstand the Adrian Peterson role. So we know what Chris Thompson is. He's essentially a poor man's James White, right? So it appears that he's going to go. I mean, he's a tough guy. There's a guy coming off an ACL injury several years ago. He did it in, 8 months? I mean, Adrian Peterson is built to go, and he's still doing his thing. He's like a boxer that just couldn't relinquish his career, and he's 34 years old, and again, this is a game that he's probably going to want to play in, and he's probably going to want to look decent because of the,
I would say that the reality is twice sprained ankle playing on that in 4 days. I would set my expectations fairly low. It's a tough matchup, even for a healthy back.
I think that's the more important thing is almost that regardless of if he plays, like last week, things were like about as ideal as you could ask for him. As a Washington Redskin, I got 20 carries in a game that never really got out of hand because of the weather, which also just set them up. They threw 12 passes, and they ran the ball 26 times. He got 20 of those. He still only hit 81 yards, and he didn't catch a single pass, because even if they throw more passes, he's not a pass catcher. He's never been a pass catcher. And, there's just they're not going to throw him passes. They're going to be down more, basically, in any game that isn't a torrential downpour. And now he's beat up. There's no reason to play him, I would say.
Right. I do feel like, though, that this is Bill Callahan's ideal offense. Right now, we're seeing what he wants to do. He is accomplishing all his goals as interim coach, which is run the football, throw less. And, they brought in a fullback last week. But I'm kind of skeptical of all this at this point in time, of the notion that he could play effectively. If he plays at all, and we'll see. I wouldn't be invested. You mentioned Alvin Kamara for the Saints. Interesting note we heard today, Kyle. Zach Jenner released by the New Orleans Saints. An indication that Alvin Kamara will be ready to return from his maybe a 1 week absence so far, with what we've heard was a high ankle sprain. There are some dots to be connected here that I'm sure Kyle's connected because he was connecting them in a direct message to me immediately after this happened. His enthusiasm with Kerryon Johnson going on IR. For the Lions, obviously there's a need for some backfield help in Detroit, where Zach Zenner last played or last spent most of his time. But for Kamara, it's the Saints going against the Cardinals. Drew Brees is going to start throwing the ball again this week. They haven't ruled him out yet, I suspect. They have a bye next week. So I guess that's the issue right now is, do we think the Saints are going to feel the need to push it against the Cardinals when they have the bye?
I don't think so.
I'm honestly even surprised. I guess as an NFL coach, you don't really, maybe they don't play the mind games of, well, we're probably going to beat the Cardinals with or without Kamara, so let's just rest him. So they seem to not be playing that game. They probably don't need to push it a ton, but he's been a hyper-efficient player. I think in season long, you're still starting him. But I probably just want no piece of him in DFS. I guess, Justin, do you have a different take?
No, I mean, what's the sense in moving him along? That Teddy Bridgewater's looked pretty good. What's the sense to push, obviously, Drew Brees? And if Alvin Kamara, a high ankle, these things tend to linger. Sometimes they say they're worse than a break. So this is a team that's going to the playoffs. And naturally, they want Drew Brees and Alvin Kamara at 100%, but I don't see a sense of urgency right now to rush either of them back.
I would agree with that. Now, we saw last week the Arizona Cardinals. It was an interesting turn of events, or I don't know. It depends on how close of attention you were paying. As the week went on, David Johnson had the ankle issue. He returned to practice on Friday, but Cliff Kingsbury said on Friday, had the game been that day, Johnson wouldn't have played. There's been some subsequent chicanery with the team's Twitter feed, trolling the fantasy owners a bit. Should have played Chase Edmonds, things like that. Look, as somebody who did play Chase Edmonds, I did it based on the note. And thank you for helping me break even in my tournament lineups, Chase Edmonds. But it seemed to me Cliff Kingsbury was talking about this last Monday and Tuesday, that he was lamenting not giving Chase Edmonds more carries, even when David Johnson was in the mix the week before. So this week, when you heard about the issues with the injuries for Johnson, I think where the confusion came in was Cliff Kingsbury probably wasn't telling the real truth when he said after the game, David Johnson was an emergency guy only. We knew this going in. they knew that going in. Why did he start and why did he play 3 snaps? I mean, why did you even dress him if you knew going in he wasn't going to play? So I think that lent to some of the confusion. But heading into this week, if we knew in advance that there would be no David Johnson, Justin, how excited would you be to play one Chase Edmonds?
I would be excited. 31 touches last week, 29 touches involved in the receiving game. The narrative was there last week. I mean, we went to Fordham University right there. So the narrative was there, and it's frustrating. I don't have any David Johnson.
Where is Fordham? How do you have knowledge of where Fordham University is?
It's in Brooklyn. Right. Everyone knows this.
Yeah.
Right. So the local narrative, he threw up a couple times in the barrel, and DJ was on the sideline getting ready to come in. But this kid is good. I know some of us are apprehensive to talk about handcuffs, but if there was a handcuff this year, coming into this season, I think Chase Edmonds was the guy. I mean, I certainly have my best ball shares of him. It's interesting when you look at the DraftKings prices this week, 6,400 for DJ, 62 for Edmonds. It might be a scenario to stay away from, right, against the Saints' run defense.
Saints, so, right. That's a little worrisome to me.
Why play eeny, meeny, miny, mo? I suppose if you have 200 lineups, then you could dabble and try to swerve, but I don't see a necessity to play either of them. Now, if I'm forced to play one of them, given what Chase Edmonds did and the volume that he received, I don't know why the Arizona Cardinals would have him standing on the sideline, because he is certainly more than competent.
They signed Alfred Morris on Tuesday to add some depth to the situation, maybe a further indication that we should not expect David Johnson to be back fully. DJ Foster is another back on the roster who was also hurt. That caused a little bit of issues last week. So this may just be depth to cover him, but it also seems like it's a high enough profile. They worked out Jay Ajayi, and he didn't get the call. So the fact that they went Alfred Morris over Ajayi maybe tells us something where Ajayi is, and we'll see where that goes. So I guess, for me, talking to Edmonds a couple weeks ago, he seemed really enthusiastic to play a supporting role. I would expect that this is going to be more of a split going forward than anyone in season-long fantasy had hoped for when they drafted David Johnson. There were a couple big trades today, or if not big, at least noteworthy trades. Emmanuel Sanders traded to the San Francisco 49ers, where he will go to an offense very similar to the one that they were running at Denver. His coordinator there was the quarterback's coach under Kyle Shanahan the last couple of years. So maybe he comes in with a little knowledge. Certainly need their wide receivers have not been productive. Young group, not very experienced, not very healthy either right now. Mohamed Sanu traded to the New England Patriots, where Bill Belichick has coveted him. I think it's just because he saw him throw a pass once and he said, I need that gadget. Kyle, what are your expectations for Sanders?
I mean, maybe it's possible this week that it's a bit of a slower start. Like, any player coming in on a shortened week to a new team might be a little bit of a slower start, but I overall think that it's an upgrade. I guess George Kittle's the number one receiver on this team, so he's still competing with a number one, but in terms of just, volume compared to the receivers, Courtland Sutton is getting way more work than, any of, combined Dante Pettis and any other receiver, Marquise Goodwin, anybody they have there. So I think this is probably an upgrade. And also, you just have to like this offense more. I'm honestly shocked Joe Flacco even finished the last game he played. He looked so bad. Whereas Jimmy Garoppolo, they haven't needed to rely on him because their defense has been so good and they've been winning every single game. But in the event that they do throw a lot, I obviously take Jimmy Garoppolo over Joe Flacco. So maybe a bit higher variance because they are they don't have to pass the ball as much. Their rushing attack is so good. Their defense is so good. But overall, his upside on a weekly basis, I feel, is tremendously upgraded.
Justin, in New England, Mohamed Sanu, he can play fullback, tight end, offensive guard, center, quarterback, punter. What else? How will they use him there? I guess the bigger question really is this maybe an indication that we should be concerned about Josh Gordon's longer term health?
I think it is somewhat of an insurance policy, but look, they're winning, right? Pretty easily. The defense is doing the job. We've gone over that at length. The fact of the matter is, they're relying on a 33-year-old Julian Edelman to do a lot, and there needs to be more. There's a lack of tight end weaponry. Gronk is gone. I'm trying to get the run game going, which, they do have that. Mohamed Sanu is 6'2". He's merely identical to Quincy Enunwa, a big-bodied guy. I think he can help out Tom Brady a lot. He's polished wide receiver, kind of goes unnoticed in that Atlanta Falcons offense, but he's a steady guy. A lot of talk around here about, well, they gave up a second-round pick for him, but, sometimes you don't know where you're going to get in second-round picks, and the Pats have swung and missed. I think where you're getting in a guy like Mohamed Sanu, and just like Emmanuel Sanders being a necessity in San Francisco, because I think that he is, and it's shocking to say this, but I think a guy like Mohamed Sanu, after the AB thing went south, Mohamed Sanu was somewhat of a necessity for Tom Brady. When you look at his line last night, it wasn't spectacular. They didn't need him to be, but the truth is he's relying on players like Jacoby Myers, who's coming into his own. N'Keal Harry is going to come back eventually, but outside of that, it's Philip Dorsett. We don't know what's up with Josh Gordon, so it was a good trade. And as football fans, and I'm sure you guys would be in agreement that teams want players like Mohamed Sanu, durable, tough, consistent, and quietly consistent. So it's a plus, and the rich get richer.
Fair point. All right, and so just let me touch base on the Kerryon Johnson, Kyle. Do you see any value in Ty Johnson or J.D. McKissic, or are we just waiting? There's been a lot of talk that maybe Kenyon Drake trade rumors have been rolling around. Is this kind of more a wait and see situation, or will you dive in on either of those guys?
I mean, given that we are in week 8 of the NFL season, usually you get a lot of your I usually think of it like 0 RB running backs, but really for any team, you get your now next bell cow backs because of injury or trades or whatever it may be early in the season. The fact that we might get I think you have to stay on injury reserve for 6 weeks, which Kerryon Johnson was placed on. 8. Oh, sorry, 8. You have to stay on injury reserve.
He can get back late if they make a really late season run and heading for the playoffs. So it's
week 16, I think they said.
Yeah. So
week 16.
So for fantasy sense, he's basically done for the season. I would imagine you can basically cut him. There's no point in getting him back for one game for that roster spot. Ty Johnson basically will get you through the rest of the way of the fantasy season, assuming nobody else is brought on, which I'd kind of be surprised if that happens. But last week, he got 10 carries, J.D. McKissick's 5, and he actually out-targeted him, which is the real thing that surprised me. So it seems like they want to keep McKissick in this 2-minute drill, third down back role where Ty Johnson gets pretty much everything else. And he's a guy they seem to like in preseason. They kept him over fan favorite Zach Zenner, who I don't know, maybe they bring back, but until that happens, Ty Johnson looks like I don't want to say entirely the guy, but definitely the dominant back in this backfield where McKissick is just the Giovanni Bernard type. So for me, I'm probably blowing what I have left of the fab budget. Mostly because I don't have a ton left. But yeah, this might be your last chance to get a starting RB2, RB3 back for the rest of the season. So I would actually just blow whatever you have left on him because this is the best opportunity you're going to have to get a starting back.
All right, let's dive into the DFS slate this week. Justin, we'll start with quarterbacks with you.
The prices have tightened up on DraftKings this week. If you're going to pay a premium, it's going to be Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson, both in great spots, but they're both over $7K. And as I look at it, I don't find myself obligated to pay for either of them. If I'm going to pay down a little bit, it's going to be Jared Goff at home. It was solid last week at Atlanta. Gets just an even better matchup at home against the Cincinnati Bengals. Feels safe to me at 6,800, but not 100% sold on Jared Goff. It was nice to see Todd Gurley kind of perform better. I'm becoming more optimistic about him. So the ground game is there. We obviously know the weaponry that he has, and Gerald Everett is coming into his own. So I don't see myself paying for Wilson or Watson at those price tags. So it's going to be Goff. If I'm going to pay down a little bit, it's going to be Matthew Stafford. I mean, the conversation you guys just had about the Lions' backfield is ambiguous, to say the least. Then they weren't terrific when Kerryon Johnson was healthy. So what does that say? I think Matthew Stafford should do what he does best. Go to the air, sling it. Saw a little of that last week. It was fantastic as far as I could see. It was the Marvin Jones show. I think this week it'll be the Kenny Golladay show. And let Matthew Stafford use his weaponry. I like the price at $6,100. We're not accustomed to paying up for Matt Stafford either, but his matchup is superb as well. And I go way down. Again, the list is going to be short. It's only Tuesday night. I suppose I could, in tournaments, I could dabble with Ryan Tannehill. You guys can hang up now.
Great matchup. It's a great matchup. I don't think it's crazy.
He's a pro. The victim of circumstance in Miami. Can't blame him for everything. He got Corey Davis involved. Use your weaponry. And Corey Davis kind of came to life. I know that is sporadic, but hopefully we'll see more of vintage Corey Davis that we have yet to see on a consistent basis. So I like Ryan Tannehill, 5,100 at home against Tampa Bay. Stack him up with Corey Davis, and that's probably as low as I will go. But tonight, dollar for dollar, Matthew Stafford is jumping out to me.
All right, Kyle, go ahead and punch holes in that or add to it and then pivot to running backs for us.
Yeah, I don't know if I can punch holes in Stafford. I actually think he's a really solid play this week against the Giants. And the one thing I think I like him more than Goff, like obviously the price discrepancy between him and Goff, $700 on DK, Jared Goff is $6,800 compared to Stafford $61, is that I don't see like any way at this point that Cincinnati can force LA to like basically play in the second half. Like Cincinnati just looks completely dust, whereas like the Giants, not a great offense, but I at least think like you have to project them to score more points than Cincinnati, so they might challenge Stafford in this offense to keep playing. And at 6,100, the way Stafford's been playing, I totally like playing him in cash. Maybe he'll end up being a bit popular in tournaments after a string of a couple of good games. I do think I'd actually be fine paying up with Sean Watson. One other name I kind of want to throw out and see what you guys think. Mitchell Trubisky at 4,900. Basically, there are almost no starting quarterbacks priced below him. 4,900 is like such a low price for a guy who typically has rushing equity. This season, he's not carrying the ball a ton. I'm not sure if that's a product of the circumstances or maybe it's related to like last week with the injuries coming back from, but I still think that probably has to be innate in the way he plays is to carry the ball. And 4,900, I don't care how bad he is. Like last week, I think he was around like 20 points or something. That's totally fine at that price. So I think that's actually a viable play in cash.
You can have Sam Darnold too if you want.
Oh no.
It's not looking good. I would agree though. I mean, look, everyone has value at the right price, and I think he's fairly priced. Let's leave it at that and jump into running backs, Kyle.
Yeah, running backs, assuming they don't take anybody. Ty Johnson, I think, is going to be not like a true 3-down back, but he's going to get a ton of work at 4,900. I think I don't want to say he's a cash game lock yet because they could sign or trade for somebody. But also, I just think maybe regardless, I don't even know. Like they haven't activated Paul Perkins yet, which was surprising after cutting C.J. Anderson for him. So I think Ty Johnson might just be the guy. At 4,900, I'm more than willing to take that risk, probably even in cash. And then if I'm paying up, Leonard Fournette still doesn't have the right price. 7,800, he should be just below McCaffrey. Like he's got to be the number 2 in terms of volume. I mean, like in terms of price because of the volume he sees, he's number 2 in the league in volume. So yeah, I think he's pretty much just a lock until they price him up above 8K for me. Like that's kind of where I'm going. I don't know. I guess David Montgomery. I guess basically all of the Bears are underpriced because of I think public perception, but they also might just be bad. So those are probably tournament only plays. And Chris Carson last week got a ton of volume, got over 20 carries, was targeted again, and just didn't get there basically because of touchdowns and not breaking off any like chunk runs against the Atlanta defense. I'm totally about him at 7K. So that's probably where I'm going to be going at running back. Maybe Chris Carson a little bit more of a tournament play, but overall I think he's viable in both.
I feel like the Bears offense has just been so pitiful in terms of scoring power that people are dialed off them. I think that's a fair point. I don't know that they're going to improve though, which is also a fair point. Justin, jump into the wide receivers for me.
Okay. I guess you don't want me to talk about running backs this week.
But you can.
And that's fine. I they're pricey. Again, DraftKings has adjusted their prices accordingly. I can't envision myself spending $9,200 for Christian McCaffrey. I want to pay down. I don't even think that Leonard Fournette's worth sub 8K, but I suppose based on volume, you have to go there. Talked about the Rams game. Todd Gurley's growing on me. This is a guy that was right around 10K for most of last year. So getting a discount on Todd Gurley, permitting he is healthy. And look, not because I'm from New England, but Sony Michel and James White are both projecting well this week. Obvious reasons. I mean, I think they're going to go to the ground a ton. They get Cleveland at home. They're big favorites. It feels right. The prices feel right. Again, they're both projecting well. I'll throw 2 more names at you. I do like Austin Eckler. His role has not changed. Well, it has changed. The carries have gone down, but he is their modern-day Danny Woodhead. 28 PPR points last week at Tennessee. sub 6K, 5,900. I love the dump offs. Phillip Rivers loves him. I think he's a beast there. I think he'll go under owned. And I do like Josh Jacobs. You know, I look at Josh Jacobs' run, and he does look like a younger Frank Gore. The Raiders got what they bargained for with Jacobs. So 5,800 in a pretty good matchup. Looks like it could be a potential shootout in Houston, although Aaron Rodgers dissected the Raiders. I don't know that Watson can certainly do it too, but he's not Aaron Rodgers. So Michelle, James White, and let's see, Austin Eckler. As far as paying way down, you know, it breaks my heart to see Joe Mixon at 4,600, but it just feels like this was a bust. Can't blame it all on him. So the list is short. Again, there'll be more revelations as the week goes on. It's only Tuesday. But it's certainly not going to be Christian McCaffrey at 9,200. I can't envision him running wild against the 49ers in San Francisco. I can talk about some wide receivers if you want now.
Feel free.
Unless you want to hear Kyle's voice. It's a position that we feel it's probably the funnest position each week to look at in terms of the depth, and you can swerve. And you know, right off the bat, it's going to be Cortland Sutton, $5,300 for dollar for me at Indianapolis. Obviously, Emmanuel Sanders is gone. This is a kid that's going to see 8 to 10 targets each week from here on out. Bonafide wide receiver one, another team that they got what they bargained for with Sutton. I think he is the real deal. I think the three of us knew that was coming, and is the opportunity is certainly here now with Sanders out. So the discount there. I mentioned Matthew Stafford. I'm going to take some Kenny Golladay at home against the Giants. I know it was a Marvin Jones week. I think it'll be a Kenny Golladay week this week. 6,400. Kenny Golladay, by and large, is Matthew Stafford's guy. Baby Calvin Johnson or Minitron, whatever the hell it is. The price feels right. I am there with Kenny Golladay. And the lone Chicago Bear that I have interest in, and I touted him last week, and I had a bunch of them in DFS, is Allen Robinson. And we're seeing shades of vintage Jacksonville Jaguar Allen Robinson in Chicago. 16 targets. He's that proverbial safety blanket for Mitch Trubisky, kind of like Michael Thomas is serving for Teddy Bridgewater in New Orleans. So 6K Allen Robinson, I think any week his ceiling is nearly as high as anybody's. So that's where I'm at this week. And I suppose if I'm going to pay up, it's going to be Michael Thomas. Why get off it now? I don't care that Patrick Peterson's there. You could argue today that Michael Thomas is the best wide receiver in the NFL. He's not going to see less than double-digit targets each week. And that's where I'm at. I think he's got his floor is probably 18 points, and his ceiling is damn near 50. So 8K, I feel comfortable with Michael Thomas. Must pay way up.
Got a little MVP talk starting to circulate about one Michael Thomas. So we'll see if he can keep up that pace.
It's warranted.
Kyle, yeah, I don't disagree. And we'll see what Drew Brees. He's also Drew Brees' favorite target. So I think everyone there is kind of on board with that. Kyle, I don't want to hurt your feelings. Go ahead and give me a wide receiver that Justin didn't. And if you once you get clear of that, tell me about your tight ends.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I don't have feelings anymore. I pushed those out to make room for more stats. And what I want to drop on you is Chris Godwin, over 28 points in 3 straight games, 71K. He's over 28 in 4 of the last 5. Like, I don't get how he's only, like, that's like, they were on bye last week and they forgot to price him correctly. I think, like, I'm basically locking into my cash. I just think, like, the volume he's seeing, I don't care what his matchup is at 7,100. Like, I don't care if Tennessee probably doesn't project to score a ton of points. Yeah, just jamming Chris Godwin at 7,100, that's just a, like, blatantly bad price. I think some interesting tournament plays. You've got like, Tyler Boyd, who gets all the targets, and his Bengals offense is just so incredibly bad. The fact that they're low 8-out targets makes me think that last week catching 5 of 14 targets, and the week before that getting 3 of 7, like, they're so close to the line of scrimmage. I don't want to say confident, but I believe at least, like, Andy Dalton can make a decent amount of those. I think that low of a catch percentage, although you still expect to be lower than average, is probably an anomaly. So at 5,100, if you're stacking LA, that's who I would run it back with, is Tyler Boyd. Kenny Stills at 4,700. Will Fuller expected to be out a few weeks, I believe. So yeah, Will Fuller 4,700. Last week we saw him get over 100 yards for the first time this season, and his first time as a Texan. I think as long as Will Fuller's out, that's always in play because he's their only true, like, specialty deep threat. He's going to be on the field the entire time, or at least close to it. So, I think he just slides right into the Will Fuller role, maybe with a little bit of that volume going to Hopkins. But yeah, I think Kenny Stills at 4,700 is just is like not your free square running back, but it's kind of your free square receiver if there were to be one this week. And then finally, Mike Williams, the past 2 weeks before last week, was crushing Keenan Allen volume. It came back a little bit, but he still came close to 100 air yards. Maybe if you wanted to run like a Trubisky-Robinson stack and then run it back with Williams would be a very unique build. Neither of these defenses really scare me anymore. Chicago's fine. The Chargers aren't that good. Both these teams, I imagine, are just going to be super under-owned as well. So maybe I'm just getting too into the price game with these guys, but I actually don't hate this game for value, running like maybe 2 or 3 player stacks.
Interesting. And tight ends?
Tight ends for me, this week, I'm probably just going to go back to some of the guys who have been playing the past few weeks. Evan Ingram burned last week, but now his price, like the problem was he was so incredibly priced that if you played him, he burned you last week because he cost you so much of your salary. Like, do you want to take under 2 points from your tight end? No, but if you paid for TJ Hawkinson and you got 4 last week, you didn't feel burned because he was 3,600. Now Evan Ingram back to like a reasonable tight end price on not the greatest offense at 5,300. I think it's fine to go back to him, especially in tournaments where I'd imagine he'll go under-owned. Running like Stafford, Galladay, and then running back with Ingram is probably a very viable strategy. Hunter Henry, just getting dominant work at 4,900. It's kind of like the Mark Andrews argument last week where he's not the most volume-laden tight end, but just it's underpriced for what he's getting, and especially his talent. Honestly, Hunter Henry, I think, is just one of the best tight ends in the league. So I'm probably just going to pay right in that mid-range again, not going to pay up for George Kittle necessarily. And I still think TJ Hawkinson at 3,500 is a fine tournament play, but I think last week kind of showed you the volume he's going to get just doesn't give him the best floor. I'd rather pay up a little more for probably an Evan Ingram.
Justin, feel free to dive into the sea of mediocrity now.
Yeah, Kittle and Evan Ingram were just way high last week, and I didn't go near either of them. And you're getting a, $1,200 discount this week with Evan Ingram. I like that call, Kyle, a lot. I think that's a game that you could potentially stack, and Ingram would certainly be in that stack. Doesn't look like Sterling Shepard's going to play. Golden Tate's coming into his own. We like that. Darren Waller's price is justified now. He was the play last week, but now he's 5,900. I don't know that you get off Waller either because he's kind of like Evan Ingram, kind of like George Kittle. That de facto wide receiver one is exactly what he is. I think you can justify paying 5,500 for Austin Hooper. Mohamed Sanu is out of the equation now. The targets have gone down every week for Sanu, but Austin Hooper is your wide receiver one, gentlemen, tonight. 5,500. It could be a shootout, or they could be getting killed too. I think Austin Hooper is a lock at that price. And, the sea of mediocrity is deep and it can get murky, to say the least. So I don't see why you would stray too far down. I would agree with the Hunter Henry call. And I also think that in tournaments you can use Zach Ertz, 5,100. Zach Ertz is healthy. The numbers have gone down the last couple weeks. Dallas Goedert got in the equation. They're keen on him in Philadelphia, but let's be honest, it's the Zach Ertz show at 5,100. I mean, this guy has a ceiling as high as any tight end. So I will sprinkle some Zach Ertz in at a low ownership for certain in tournaments against the Buffalo Bills, with a Carson Wentz at the helm. I do like Gerald Everett, 4,300. It's a digging in the crates price. Everett finally is being noticed by Jared Goff. We like that. Week 5, 11 targets. Week 7, 10 targets against the Niners. We'll give him a pass there. Did not show up, but I think that Jared Goff wants to use him, and he should. Has shades of a young Jared Cook, one of these hybrid tight ends that we like to see. So, Kyle, I'm with you as far as Hunter Henry for certain. The getting's good with Hunter Henry because he's like an ear flick away from, or a wedgie away from an absence. So I would agree. Defenses, 4,300. The New England Patriots they should probably be 6K. And, I know we don't like to spend on defenses, but I think it's dangerous when you pay way down because you can end up with, for instance, I used the Jets last night. If you don't pay 4,300 for the New England Patriots at home, Gillette Stadium against an erratic Baker Mayfield, and everybody else has him and you don't, you're going to be in some fantasy problems. And this is a team that's getting over 20 fantasy points a game. for you not to play them would be absolutely crazy at home. So I'm gonna lock in the New England Patriots because they're not 5K and they're 4,300, and I will save elsewhere. But I'll probably have 100% New England Patriots, and I think that at the very least they'll have 10 or 11 fantasy points, and that's completely fine with me.
Yeah, very high scoring, as we mentioned at the open. And just one thing on the Rams tight ends, they are running more 2 tight end sets. It's kind of come at the expense of a little bit Cooper Kupp. His snap count was down a little bit, and everyone's feeling the impact though with both Gerald Everett and Tyler Higbee in there. Kyle, your defensive team of choice, not named the New England Patriots.
Yeah, they're going to be tempting to pay up for it, something I haven't done this season. It's burned me a few times, but I think if you want to pay down, it worked last week. Like, this exact strategy worked last week. You pay down for a cheap defense against Houston, you get a lot of sack equity, and you're fine knowing that you're not going to get, you're not getting the Patriots ceiling, but also you're getting a good floor of, I don't know, probably multiple sacks. This week it's Oakland, and yeah, they're not a good defense, but they're not bottom tier Miami, Atlanta defense, and that's really all I'm worried about is not them getting completely annihilated. They're 1,500. That's the exact reason you're playing them, is you're probably getting 2 or 3 sacks at 1,500, and they might drop you 6 or 7 points. And really, in terms of value, that's absolutely fine. That would be a great value on this slate. So yeah, for me, I think they're a great play. I think Jacksonville is interesting because they DraftKings didn't get to see the just awful atrocities, the war crimes that the Patriots committed on the Jets. So Jacksonville didn't get that nice matchup boost in terms of their price. They're only 2,900, facing what looked to be an all-time awful offense against one of the best defenses I've honestly ever seen. But at 2,900, I think they're a very good value as well. And I think stacking them with Fournette is probably a very viable option, basically, if you're not going for Oakland and cash.
It sounds like winning strategies to me. We'll see how they all play out over the course of time. Justin, get us out of here.
Another good show. Week 8, I can't believe we're at the midway point. It happens every year. We talk about it, we anticipate it, and all of a sudden it's mid-season, and the Patriots are the best team in the NFL. So it's just another year, and it was a good show. Yeah. I'm eager to speak with you guys every Tuesday because that's what we do. And I think next week, I mentioned it last week, I think we're going to have freezing cold takes on here. Have some Q&A with my Fred Siegel, a wizard on social media in terms of calling people out, but a great guy overall.
Yeah, I think, Justin, it'd be very impressive next week when you make sure you can pick no Patriots, and we'll see if you even know what football is. Everybody hit the website. As always, we'll have tons of stuff going up. Kyle and Bobby Gomes will be doing their DFS roster builds on Wednesday night video, Sunday morning in the pregame. You can catch my injury preview, overview, review video on Saturdays, kind of get you up to speed for everything and set the plate for you on Sunday. Well, this podcast will be available on the website as well as an array of articles, including articles by myself, Justin, and Kyle, DFS and news and other good fun stuff. Tons of stuff available, so check it out on footballdiehards.com.
Yeah, that's it. You can find us on Twitter. Find Justin at Justin Lonero, myself at Kyle Tweets here, and Bob at Football Diehard. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.